Okay, it looks like we are live. I apologize for the delay, everyone. I had to take care of a couple things here on the house last minute before we started this, but we're all here. We're ready to go. My name's GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen, usual spiel that I do on my channel. You already all know who I am. Joined tonight by the OG GM and Connell.
Howdy.
And tonight we're going to be, oh, here she comes.
What was that?
The cat.
20 seconds? 30 seconds?
Yeah, it never takes her long. Hi, Nikki.
I want to be on TV.
Show your face to everyone. This is how we get the clicks.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is how we get the clicks. So tonight's discussion is going to be the challenges that come with running games outside of the standard fantasy genre. That standard for tabletop games usually being medieval or Renaissance era fantasy. So we got a few options for how we can tackle this, but a couple of the ideas that I had for things that we could look at in terms of this were, if I could find my list, methods for rewarding the players when magic items are largely off the table. That's one big thing that I've always run into with games outside the fantasy genre. What kind of rewards do you give to your players? What kind of ways do you give to enhance their characters? And, sometimes small, sometimes big, but always hopefully meaningful ways when, the fancy magic items, that's not an option for you. You're not playing that kind of game. Discussing potentially how the feel of those types of games, of these different genres, can differ from fantasy, and methods to make these genres more engaging for the players and kind of, for want of a better phrase, try to break the fantasy monopoly, as it were, although I don't really think that's necessarily actually ever going to happen. Okay. So, excuse me. Say bye.
Okay. Use me to get you
she's
money.
She's not happy with me picking her up. So I guess I'll go ahead and I guess we can go ahead and launch this by kind of talking about probably how the feel of the different genres varies when moving outside of fantasy. I think that'd be kind of a nice, easy one to sort of segue into things, as opposed to jumping in harder on a harder topic, like harder as in a more concrete topic, like, methods of rewarding the players, or something that's more concrete to game systems themselves. And I'm going to just go ahead and I'll just go ahead and start with horror, I suppose, because that's, I think, the one that's most easy to differentiate, with horror having that very distinct feel that you want to bring to the table. You don't necessarily want to make your players scared. Maybe you do, but you certainly want to make people in your game feel uncomfortable with horror. That's sort of the main goal. I would assume that's something that we could all agree on, because that is horror's core goal. You want to be made to feel uncomfortable and uneasy, and that's not easy to accomplish in a tabletop game. I'm sure every single one of us here has tried to run a horror-themed game on Halloween or something at some point. Maybe we've had it be successful. I'm sure more likely we've had it be a disastrous failure. I know I've had games be disastrous failures when attempting to run horror. But, some of the different things that are needed to make a horror game feel engaging, as opposed to a fantasy game, which is a lot easier to kind of get invested in and understand. And I think that ease of investment is a big part of why fantasy continues to remain dominant, apart from the fact of, obviously, D&D is considered to be the one that started it all. D&D was medieval fantasy. It's based off Lord of the Rings, blah, blah, blah. We all know that shit already. Horror is a different animal entirely, in my experience, because of the fact that you're trying to elicit a different feeling from your players, an entirely different feeling, especially from this typical heroic fantasy. That's a lot more difficult to accomplish in games, especially games where, your players are going to have the means to fight against the monstrosities and the evils and the nightmare scenarios that they're going up against. So the question then becomes, how do we bring that feeling out? And I think that's something that can apply to all the genres, that question of how do we bring the unique feelings to these genres out? It's nice to know that we're loved, Max.
Is he joining us tonight, or is this going to be the three of us?
Looks like it might only be the three of us right now. And Kai is touching on a very good point right here, too. Big questions that we need to ask with the different genres. In the case of horror, what kind of horror are we trying to get? If we're trying to get something like slasher horror, gore, that's going to be a lot easier to accomplish than psychological horror or even cosmic horror, despite the fact that Call of Cthulhu is the second best-selling game in the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was actually thinking Cthulhu when you're bringing up the topic horror. I'm like, do we go to Cthulhu, or do we fall back to the old tropes of, oh no, there's a zombie or vampires, or let's flee from the werewolf? What scenario horror do you want tonight?
Horror, I mean, if D&D is the power fantasy, horror is taking that power away from the players and placing them in situations where they don't have complete control. And as we know, apparently that upsets a lot of people. Late for some reason lately. But the reason why horror works, is when we're viewing horror, is either the "why are you so stupid," or the jump scares are getting just wrapped up in the story, and it's the music, the lighting, the pacing. There's so many things, so many layers to a good horror that draws you in. It's not just the gore and the blood and the guts. I mean, Halloween stands the test of time, not because it's the father of the slasher film, but it's because of the music and the atmosphere and Jamie Lee Curtis's reactions and introducing the idea of the first final girl and just presenting this completely unkillable force that doesn't translate well once you're just rolling dice, and especially switching from the idea that my character can kick open doors and cast lightning and whatever to my character's some kid at a summer camp. So yeah, it's how do you take that sense of control away from the players? Sure, there's rules, obviously, dice rolls, horror saving throws, fear checks, points that can taken away, but there's harder, that's still, how do you get that investment? I mean, you dim the lights? Do you play on fears? And the best way, I think, especially with running horror, is to show less, because the big trick of horror is you never really see till you do, and it's always what your mind is building up, and that's usually always better than the actual reveal. So if there's a way that a DM can do the same thing to, like Crafty says, it's the fear of the unknown. There's something there, but you don't know what it is.
The problem I've had running horror, because I have the Halloween specials or the Friday the 13th specials that DMs give to their players, just because it falls on certain holidays. Hell, I even did a horror campaign on Christmas because it might be Krampus coming through the door, not old Saint Nick. Is a lot of the video games, I hate to, whatever. But a lot of the video games, movies, even back in our grandparents' day where everything was on the radio, you didn't see what's coming. You didn't know what's behind the next door. But with the modern gaming style that we have now, we throw out these great big maps via tabletop or virtual top, and there's going to be something behind that door. There's always something behind the door. Oh, wait, the DM is pulling out a zombie fig. Or
horror is probably the hardest.
Yeah. There's no quick square. quick scares for the players. They can play that their character is scared because their character knows that there's nothing behind the door. But the moment the gigs up, the moment they see the map.
Yeah, I think one of the games that does it best. Are you guys familiar with Dread?
I'm not familiar with that one. No.
Dread is a horror game that uses Jenga.
Huh.
So you
That's kind of interesting.
you build the Jenga tower, and whenever you have to do something, you're pulling one of the pegs from the Jenga tower. So that automatically starts building up the suspense. Is this going to be the next one that causes everything to go bad? You know, Susie wants to open the door. Well, pull a Jenga tower. And if you pull the wrong one, everything collapses and that just starts the cascade. So that just obviously starts building up that anticipation that, you know, is this going to be the one move that makes the tower fall? So that's a very simple game with a very simple trick that somebody used to make really.
Yeah, that's a clever way to sort of bake that into the mechanical side of things.
Yeah, you gotta ranch up that stress level somehow.
Yeah. So for myself, like Crafty, you were saying, Connell, and Crafty mentioned here too. Yeah, I found Theater of the Mind. You have to use Theater of the Mind if you want effective horror in a tabletop game. You can't rely on a battle map. That's why games like D&D and Pathfinder are terrible for running horror games. You can put the horror trappings on there, you can put the skin on it, and you could absolutely still have fun. But at that point, you're not playing horror. You're maybe playing dark fantasy, but it's not horror. Well, it's a very different beast.
Yeah.
Theater of the Mind's got to work. You've got to take the tools away.
I think, let's say you're using battle map and completely staying away from the fantasy, all the systems, Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, and all of them, just completely staying away from them. But still using the map, you could do aliens, xenomorphs.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest scare that you had in the original one is you did not, it was, everybody knew that there was an alien on their ship, but they did not know
no idea where it was.
Yeah.
So what you do is, hey, you got a battle map. You have a battle map of a space station or your Deep Space Nine. Pick your whatever. And creepy music.
Much respect to Ennio Morricone for being able to write not only awesome Western music but awesome horror music.
Right, and the creature. Just just don't put the fig on the map. It's the other side of the coin. Do not put the fig on the map. Have them and just pretend that the fig has. If you can't get away from your fantasy mind trap, because a lot of us are still stuck there. I'm stuck there half the time with myself. You just treat the creature as if it has invisibility. The fig never actually hits the table. Everybody else's figs are on the table. Doors, all that's on the table, but the actual fig itself. Roll me a perception check. Oh, you failed that. Okay. Roll me, next thing it grabs you. There's no reset. There is no reset button. It's a one shot. Once your player dies, it dies. It cannot be a continuously campaign. It has to be a one shot. Once your character is dead, it's dead. And that might work.
Yeah. I've had some decent bordering horror games where something like that was done. Never with a traditional battle map, though. It was always done with something with like an extra option, something like UDT, the Ultimate Dungeon Terrain, or something like that. But it never, even then, usually once the maps are brought out, unless you've got, again, a situation like Alien where there's something there, you don't really know a lot about it, it's stalking you, and there's ways built into the environment that it can stalk you and make it very hard for you to face it as a group and basically force you, if you want to find it, to have to separate. That is a way I think that you could effectively use a map to make horror kind of work, but it's still tricky. I found for myself, the Theater of the Mind tends to be the better tool for that. because by removing you remove the visual aid, and then it's just like with horror movies, the best ones. Most of the time, the best horror movies, you don't see the creatures. If you see them at all, you see the adversaries at all, you see them sparsely. And Theater of the Mind forces the players to imagine what things are going to be like. They don't have the more tactile visual aid there. You have to fucking picture it.
Never show them a picture. Never tell them what it is.
Yeah. That works. That really, Theater of the Mind. It's horror is a head game.
Exactly. That's why it's fun.
Yeah. A lot of the people I game for Theater of the Mind is something that their dads did. It's, we have all the things out there. Why don't we use them? But as a DM, it's basically your call at the end of the day. No, we're not using figs or maps. Everybody roll out their characters, and this is how it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's definitely, like, as Kai, especially Kai and Crafty are pointing out, there's a lot of ways that you can approach the horror side of things to make maps work, make environments work for you. But there's one key, really two key things that are being touched on here. Your environment's got to help you work with it, and the adversary's got to help you work with it. Something like the Terminator, like Crafty mentioned, works really well for that because Terminator is largely thought of as an action movie, but it's also a horror movie because you've got soulless, fully determined, I am going to hunt down and kill every single woman named Sarah Connor, Arnold's Terminator, and nothing will get in his way. He will mow down everything that gets in his way, and it's going to take every ounce of skill, forethought, dumb luck, what have you, for them to finally stop this thing.
Don't give any HP points into the last battle.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, that's what either you're jacking. I don't even worry about the AC. The AC is, you hit it, you just don't do anything.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of people I know where, Theater of the Mind is boring. Unfortunately, I'm kind of one of those people, though, too.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. But if I'm gaming, I want to see I want to see figs. I want to see maps. I want to see this and that.
Nikki, come on.
I don't know. As a culture, we seem to be more visual people. I don't know if this is a generational thing, but ever since TV was created, our species as a whole have always been more visual than audio when it comes to things. It seems like anymore. I have to see it to believe it. Word alone is not enough for me to believe it. I have to see it.
Yeah, I mean, you could also look at that as just like an expansion, the expansion of the reach of technology globally. We can sit here on opposite sides of the country, opposite sides of the world, and all get on this stream at the same time and talk about this stuff now.
Oh yeah,
and all be visible. But I think where horror is concerned, I think we touched on pretty well some of the differences that lie between obviously the field of horror and your standard heroic fantasy games that you see a lot of. But
horror is what's my reward, and
exactly,
since that was the whole topic. Is traditional fantasy game, I get my gold, I get my magic items, I get my level, I get my new power. Horror is I get killed.
Well, the old, the house on, I use movies as references. This is just how my brain works. The house on the haunted hill, or the remake 13 Ghosts, where the ward is you get $1 million, a fancy house, and you are better now than you used to be. You grab 5 people off the street. They're down on their luck. Somebody has kids he has to worry about. Somebody has a dying wife. Whatever. Money is always the ultimate goal for most people. And if they can survive the house, they get X. That's their golden goose. They get the money or the house, if not both. Now, I personally would take the money and burn down the house, but that's just me.
Yeah. To touch on your question, Sheris, extremely, that can be extremely useful. That's one of the things with the horror genre is that one in particular. You really have to set the mood.
Oh yeah,
And music
makes
appropriate.
The whole difference. I mean, would Jaws have been Jaws without dun?
Well,
it's just
you
take away the music.
Even better point is what you mentioned earlier, Halloween.
Yeah.
When the original cut of Halloween was showed to the producers, they laughed it off. They thought it was ridiculous. They said it wasn't scary at all. And I think John Carpenter convinced them, give me a chance to finish the soundtrack. I promise you will change your mind. They did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The soundtrack to Halloween, Jaws, or there's a few other things where the music, yes, the music gives it away, but you don't know how it's going to happen. It's the stress button again. He's just pushing the stress button in. And I have to remember that Jenga thing, though. That's a hell of a tool.
Now, I will say this with Kai. He hits on a great point here. Looping the music doesn't really work with horror. That can kind of disrupt the mood, especially once the players notice it. But a good audio setup, I do not agree, is required. Because that's one thing, like dissonant sound, that can really mess with you. You can really use that to mess with people. Having a rougher audio setup can, in some cases, actually enhance the feeling. But there's a very fine line there. There's a very fine line between being able to use something that doesn't sound fantastic to enhance that feeling and something that doesn't sound fantastic just sounding bad and annoying people. So I will absolutely say you got to tread that line real fucking carefully.
Even messing with lights can be tricky because if you mess with the lights too much, I don't know what you rolled. I can't see it because the angle of the dice and the light. I can't read my character sheet. You can't read your notes. Deeming by candlelight might sound kind of cool in theory, but I've yet to see it done well in practice.
Yeah. I mean, let's play 10 candles.
And I would say that this isn't really so much off topic, but it does act as a good way to segue us into possibly another genre. And I think probably a good one to look at would be, the umbrella of sci-fi is so huge, but OG, how about let's go ahead and we'll look at your favorite one. Let's look at your supers. Because that's something that absolutely you've got fantastical elements with superheroes for sure. But that's a very it's at the same time a very similar feel to heroic fantasy.
It's exactly the same as heroic fantasy, but it's not as popular.
Yeah, but
you would think it would be. You would think, considering our culture. I mean, I was just thinking about this when I saw today's topic. Go on any playground, anywhere in the world. How many kids do you see wearing a Dungeons and Dragons t-shirt? None. How many kids do you see wearing Batman or Spider-Man?
Captain America.
Captain or a Disney princess. You can go anywhere in the world. Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Batman.
Yeah.
And yet, superhero role-playing games are considered a joke. And considering how important comic books is to American pop culture, and just it is our only mythology. It's the only thing we've ever really created other than baseball is the comic book. That is 100%.
There's also, you could also argue the romanticized West.
Yeah. But the romanticized West it led to the comic books because you have the dime store novels that led to the penny dreadfuls that led to the pulps that led to the comic books. We're going into World War II and people need something to show them that we're beating the Nazis, and suddenly you start seeing Spy Smasher. You see characters from the pulps translate to this comic books, as well as like the cowboy stuff was translating to the comic books, and of course like the Warner Brothers stuff. And then you have masked characters like Daredevil and the Fly and the Sandman, and then these two Jewish guys from New York create this character and change the world.
Introducing Superman.
Superman.
Yeah, no, I
considering that the second, if you look even at the history of the hobby, one of the first games that was made that wasn't D&D right after D&D came out was Superhero 2024, because a bunch of guys were playing D&D and somebody said, "Can I play the Flash?" So even in the beginning, 1977, 1978, one of the very first games was Superhero 2024. So why isn't it as popular, other than, because every kid plays superheroes, but every adult would rather play some guy in chainmail? Is it the rewards? Well, there's no rewards for playing a superhero role-playing game. I can't kill anybody, and I can't take their stuff.
I think that I think that's a generational thing, because when our dads were kids, they had token and fantasy was more driven. So when this game came out, they wanted to, with it being token based, they wanted to be the Conan, pick somebody of that thought processing. Now, our generation, I'm 38. I don't know how old the rest of you guys are, but I'm 38. I grew up on Spider-Man, Batman, Green Arrow, all the main comic books. Mm-hmm. And I remember doing a paper in college, the falling of the fall was a title like the falling of modern society, what will be dug up 100 years from now. Our Superman was, Zeus. Our comic books will replace our ancestors' mythology.
No, our comic books is the American mythology. It's our mythology, just like the romanticized Old West.
Yeah. I mean, not Clint Eastwood. Jesus. Yeah, that's what I think about when I think about Western. Clint Eastwood. No, Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday.
But the romanticized West, but only became romanticized because of the Penny Dreadfuls.
Yeah.
And as the expansionism was reaching into, San Francisco, and the Penny Dreadfuls were in America, and people were hearing these stories about these larger than life characters, Doc Holliday, Wyatt Earp, Annie Oakley, and that was the beginning. And then that leads us to the Lone Ranger, which then leads us into the Shadow, the Spider, Doc Savage, which we're going into the pulps in the early 50s. Mm-hmm. That leads us to the beginning of the comic books, late 40s, early 50s. And then we have the comic books coming out, which we're basically just translating the Penny Dreadfuls to color. And then you're introducing the idea of the masked masked man.
So here's what I would say. At least if we can speak about like modern times, as in like right now, the last 10, 15 years, why they're not popular. I think they probably one, because it's a niche hobby, and two, the types of people who would have played those games are the types of people who would have been reading the comics. And the comics have sucked for the last 10 years. They've been fucking about 10 years ago is when the decline began. I think
I completely disagree with you. I think certain characters have had more attention with shittier stories than other characters with better stories that people don't.
May have gone down, but they translated to media. What happened? Yeah. What happened? 21 years ago, however long it's been?
Yeah.
Iron Man, Batman, Superman. And even before that, we had Saturday morning cartoons with superheroes.
God, do I miss those.
And then we had these sort of superheroes like He-Man. He-Man's a superhero. It's just,
Yeah.
They've always been there.
To answer your question, I would say, Crafty, He-Man is superhero. Thundar is sword and sorcery, but they both kind of blend the two.
Really? He-Man fantasy? I mean, superhero?
It's a fantasy world.
It's a fantasy world, but he is the equivalent of a superhero for that world.
I mean, he's Hercules. He's Superman.
It's magic. I mean, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but just when I think of He-Man, I think of he is a scrawny kid who becomes He-Man because of a sword that's tapped into a magic force. Well, I guess Shazam is the same.
Shazam is the same thing. And
yeah. Never mind.
Dane Blackthorne, the Black Knight. They never forced Colossus to be gay.
Classic was forced to be. No, that's Iceman.
Iceman's gay.
That was
Iceman. Colossus is hooked up with
Kitty Pryde.
Yeah.
And the Goblin Queen. Colossus is a player.
Come on, Bruce. Step it up.
The only gay X-Men are
X-Men have magic users in it, but for the most part, they're superheroes.
Yeah, the X-Men are
X-Men are weird because you have X-Men like
the superhero
magic.
Game gives you everything D&D gives you.
What?
It gives you powers, it gives you magic, it gives you stuff. What it doesn't give you is you're not supposed to kill anybody because superheroes don't kill.
That's horrible.
Where's my reward? Where's my magic ring? I don't get to take anything. I think that's part of the reason is D&D fulfills not only just some basic power fantasy, but it's the idea of my actions don't have any consequences and I can just take stuff.
Yeah.
And I can get rich, which superheroes, where are my rewards? But of course, that's not true because if anybody's ever seen the Batcave, we know that Batman robs his.
I was just thinking that Batman and his
stealing, and the Fortress of Solitude, that's filled with tons of stuff Superman has stolen over the years.
Souvenirs. It's not stealing; he's collecting a souvenir.
I'm not going to return this priceless giant penny from the mint. I'm going to keep it.
Or the T-Rex. The T-Rex. Yeah.
Here's another angle that I can think of as to why the superhero RPG is not as popular as, the fantasy standard. And I think it's partly the setting. You've got fantastical elements, of course, like these more high-tech cities, the Fortress of Solitude, the Batcave, there's all kinds of unusual, fantastical things there. But by and large, superhero stories are set in whatever their modern age is.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself, you've got the superheroes, which of course are going to put that fantastic twist on it. But that I think is probably going to have less allure than an entire world that is different. And obviously we know that, we've got superheroes where you have entire worlds that are different. You've got Mars has an entire race of superpowered aliens in the DC universe. You've got universes and multiverses of this stuff.
Would you rather, if you had a choice, live in D&D world where there's no running water, toilets, or soap, or live in today?
Well, of course you would.
I'll choose today.
You would probably choose today, but today doesn't feel as interesting and dynamic as the fantasy of the fantasy world. And let's be real, who really gets into how their toilets work in their fantasy world? Unless you're Bruce.
Yeah, I was going to say, unless you're, the old saying, everybody loves a sausage, but no one wants to see how it's made.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would like, if I could live in a fantasy world with magic, I'd pick fantasy with magic than the nonsense we've been dealing with for the last X amount of years. I think it'd be toilet. Yeah. Oh, well, there's no toilet, but I have magic. I can deal with that. But see, I'm bad. When I'm playing, I will intentionally, I don't mean to, sometimes I mean intentionally, but other times I'll turn comic book heroes into fantasy using 3.5 Pathfinder 5e fantasy editions. Like Hawkeye, Green Arrow is the easiest.
Yeah, he's just a ranger with some gadgets. He's a ranger with magic, with a magic bow, as opposed to Hawkeye, who's a ranger with a technologically advanced bow. It's the same thing.
Right. You're giving up one gimmick for the other. I think it depends. I really think it depends on, like everything else, the party and what DM you have. You can definitely, do you could play a superhero you could do a superhero campaign in King Arthur's time, as long as the DM has a good enough story to go along with it, and the players will go with it. I mean, if the players don't go with it, then you're screwed right out the gate. And if the DM doesn't know what he's doing or not have enough research into it, you're also screwed out of the gate. Was it GURPS has a superhero addition to their game?
Yep. Considering I helped write it, I would say yes. Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, D&D doesn't. Granted, you can, like I said, make characters that fall into that.
There's plenty of games, the superhero games that use the D20 system.
Right.
Mutants and Mastermind uses the OGL, and it's considered one of the best superhero games made.
All right.
I think, I mean, other than the idea that if I play superheroes, because when you're a kid, you play superheroes. You grow up, you want to be, Legolas. Why is that? What's the difference between D&D and Villains and Vigilantes? It's basically the same game. They're both power fantasies. They both give you stuff. You can do things that nobody else in the world can, and the world depends upon you.
Right. No, I agree. I completely agree with that. Yeah. I wanted to be Sherlock Holmes when I grew up, but I'm weird. But I get you.
Yeah.
Come here. It was the addition to the heroin that was basically a no-go for Sherlock.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we'll go ahead and touch on one more genre, I think, maybe two, before we move on and start actually talking about one of the other subjects. But how about, like we said, sci-fi is a massive umbrella. So there's part of me that's tempted to just touch on sci-fi as its own genre, but then it's like,
oh yeah,
what kind of sci-fi are we talking about here? Sci-fi is one of those genres that is blended so often with other genres. I mean, granted, fantasy is too, but you'd be hard pressed to find anything in a tabletop RPG that you could call hard sci-fi, unless you're maybe touching on Star Trek.
Traveler's hard sci-fi.
You have. I actually was at my local game shop yesterday, and I was looking through their RPG section, just for shits and giggles. You have Doctor Who. That's straight. Well, Doctor Who is technically a sci-fi horror.
Mm-hmm.
You have Firefly, which is a sci-fi-ish game, and there's loads of other ones. I think any outer space game would be easier to run using technology as the MacGuffin with no magic than most things that are Earth-based, or not Earth-based, but planet-based.
Yeah. So how about then, instead of trying to just tackle sci-fi, because that's such a huge umbrella. Let's look at. I mean, we'll go ahead and look at another one that you've got some expertise in, OG, and genre that's really popular again, the cyberpunk side of it.
Yes,
particularly with cyberpunk, because that's one of those games that I think, in terms of how it rewards your players, or how players are expected to kind of engage with it, kind of stands out, I think, as something that's kind of interesting and unique, given that style seems to stand out above everything in terms of how you reward people.
Well, the appeal to cyberpunk back then, and the new appeal to the resurgence of cyberpunk right now, is partially because of the video game, and partially just because we've finally caught up to everything we saw in Blade Runner, except flying cars. I'm still waiting for my flying car.
I'm still waiting for my hoverboard, so I understand.
Hoverboards exist, just not exactly the way.
Yeah, that's right. I think I've seen one on YouTube. They're using magnetics.
Hoverboards. Well, you also got the hoverboards, which are just two wheels, a little stand, and then a neon light underneath to make it look cool.
Yeah. That's close. Close. So what was the question? What is the reward, or what is the appeal?
So one of the things that I found interesting about cyberpunk is that, you've got the more tangible mechanical rewards that you can give your players, things like the cybernetics, new weapons, all that sort of thing. but a lot of the way you reward the players in the game seems to be focused on playing towards, the style and the aesthetic and building your look.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the core belief of the cyberpunk and the cyberpunk movement was style over substance. Nobody cares who you are. It's what you do. Live fast, die young, leave a recognizable corpse.
Yeah.
Because the world that they lived in was, Blade Runner meets 1984 meets Brazil meets Mad Max.
Mm-hmm.
So you have every possible dystopian, nightmare in this homogenized corporate-run world, surrounded by, devastated landscapes from, hundreds of teeny little wars, and you have access to the net. You have access to all the latest, greatest technology, or those Russian knockoffs from Militech. You have access to the ability to change who you are. I cannot believe people said Mike Poundsmith and Cyberpunk was transphobic. Because if there's any genre that embraces the ability to make yourself whatever you want, as long as you can afford it, it's cyberpunk, And cyberpunk was more than just there were people who embraced it more than just the literary genre and the games. I mean, there's so many movies that came out of that time that embraced this future isn't all bright and shiny and Star Trek. It's, the future is vending machines at every corner that sell you everything you need, including bullets.
What was that? I know it's not exactly cyberpunk, but it kind of gave me the same feel for it. There was actually two, and I'd love to see him done in a role playing setting. There was that old Bruce Willis movie where you're hooked into a machine, and you have not Android, but you have a surrogate body that does. What was it?
It was called Surrogates. He was a detective.
Yeah, I thought that was really. I mean, I know that's not quite cyberpunk, but it was definitely. It was.
No, that would fall. Yeah, that would fall.
It would definitely fall in cyberpunk. Yeah.
And what was the other one? Oh, Ready Player One.
No.
The reason why is the world sucks outside. You have to dive into a machine to live a better life.
I would
say Ready Player One falls into the same thing as Stranger Things. It's nostalgia.
It is nostalgia, but
even the writer has admitted that it's more of a field guide to his love of the 80s than an actual book.
I mean that's fair, but in terms of the world it presents,
in terms of the world and the technology, it's cyberpunk.
Yeah. And because that's kind of the core thing with cyberpunk is like, you have this advanced world, but this totally devolved society that's alongside it. Sounds kind of familiar.
An advanced world that only very few people actually have access to.
Yeah.
And everybody else either wants to be a part of or rebel against.
I just opened up a brand new club downtown wherever you live. Only X amount of people can come in, but I have big windows and you can look inside.
Yeah. But by the second day that club's either going to be gone, somebody's going to broken into the windows, there's going to be a better club down the street.
That's just the nature.
There's going to be bootlegs of the music that was played in the club because you had some rocker boy appear there and make his first thing, and then somebody else takes that bootleg and makes a different bootleg. Yeah, that's just the whole thing about Sanja.
And we've been joined by insert name here, also known as Bruce Lombardo.
Is there any name? Wait, really quick. Is there any name I can insert in there for him? Because I kind of have a few.
I did the theme along with OGGM's name for the stream.
Well, that's actually a line from a comic book.
This is actually a line you see on every form.
Yeah.
We'll go with it.
Names were taken.
When I started doing this with getting these podcasts for a hot second, when it comes to the names, I was thinking the other guy. The next week, the other guy, and to see how many others I can put in there before somebody says knock it off. Who was that guy talking? You mean the other guy? No, that guy. You mean the other guy? Yeah.
Oh, the other guy.
Yeah. The last guy to the left. Wait, what? No, I like Cyberpunk. Honestly, I was going as an RPG. I've never had the chance to sit down at a table to actually enjoy it. I guess the most Cyberpunk game I ever played was Shadowrun, and the DM just ruined it for me.
Well, that can happen with Shadowrun without.
Yeah, Shadowrun Cyberpunk with magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was no magic at the table. He's like, the only thing I'm saying no to outright in the very beginning was no magic.
Well, then you're not
So
running
it's
Shadowrun.
just
buddy.
running a straight Cyberpunk.
He's running Cyberpunk using the Shadowrun system.
With fantasy races and no magic.
Right. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I mean, I could do a game with no magic. I'm intelligent enough to not rely on magic, right? I think so. And no, the DM just ruined it. But no, Reeves.
You could explain all the non-human races as, just genetically modified or mutations, I suppose.
Right. What was it?
Yeah.
Batman Beyond, the animated series, with all the people wanting to become Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. It was it was a new trend where they were splicing animal DNA to change their appearance, and in some cases actually give themselves,
which actually we're not that far away from in reality. So yeah, everything Gibson predicted has come true.
What was that book? It came out years ago. They even made a couple movies on it. The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
Oh, that one.
Yes. Unfortunately, I am classically red, which means I'm bored half the time.
Yeah. Island Dr. Moreau, genetically modifying animals and humans.
Yeah. So I think on that subject, we can probably go ahead and move to the idea of, rewarding your players in non-fantasy role-playing games, because with the way that, medieval Renaissance fantasy dominates this genre, there is that expectation that exists among a lot of people that play these games. Obviously not all, but there is that expectation that exists that, you're going to get some kind of tangible mechanical rewards for the things you do. And what's the easy answer? Magic items. So what do you give players when that's not on the table? Because you're not playing in a game that's got magic, something like that.
What do you give the players? Progression.
What's his name? Stoner just did a video about this a couple of days ago. In fantasy, it's magic. In every other game, it's gear.
Mm-hmm.
Technology, if it's a technology-based game. Money is always good. Money is always good.
Well, in a science fiction game or a cyberpunk game or whatever,
I disagree.
Gear. Instead of a ring that gives you +1 to strength, here is a genetic modified pill that you can take for 12 hours that ups your strength. Instead of a magic armor, here's dermal plating and the latest in plastic polymer. Instead of a wand of fireballs, here's a bigger gun.
I would say that you don't have to give him gear all the time.
No,
first off,
the other rewards are improvements in.
You can give them access to a place that was previously inaccessible. Like, say, the players have just liberated a town overrun with bandits, and now they've got run of this parcel of land with about 5 or 6 buildings on it, with a forest to the west, but there's a gorge to the east, and they've been told to go to the east. Well, if the players will spend 7 to 10 months hewing lumber and somebody makes a couple good engineering rolls, they could make a trestle that goes across the span and they can access what's across the east. They don't always have to have new shiny gear, but instead they can have a new way to appreciate what they've got and where they're going by giving them access to a new side of the map, which they've never had before. You can give them, like what Camarian says, assets, contracts, allies, new resources. You don't have to require, you're not required to give them good gear. You don't need a bigger, shinier gun. You just need to give the players something that should convey a sense of accomplishment for the trials they went through.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of something I wanted to lead into, is that,
Sorry.
you know, I'm glad you went down that road, because that's something I wanted to lean into, is the idea, like, I almost think that with the way a lot of the fantasy games are designed, maybe not necessarily a lot, but particularly D&D, it's like, it's all about, and this, I'm going to say this one just to appease WotC 1st through 3rd edition specifically, is all about getting new stuff into the hands of your players.
That's the power fantasy, though. Of course, that's the direction WotC claims they're trying to take the game away and go in a different direction.
You don't. We're talking 5e. Wait, I missed that. What one are we talking? 5e?
No, just everything.
4th or 3rd. Any of the WotC ones.
D&D's always been about, levels, magic, gear.
Once again, I run a 5e campaign, and 80% of the time, it's not magical items I give to my players in 5e. It's loot. Because if you actually, once again, depends on your DM, but you don't have the Warlock and Seer's item catalog like you did in Pathfinder or original editions of Dungeons & Dragons. Now there's like maybe a book that has like 3 or 4 pages of items that the players can have. Other than that, it's just straightforward money, or maybe you're lucky finding a magical item. It's rare now. It's supposed to be rare. So I don't know, but that's just my point. That's my viewpoint on 5e. Everybody.
One other asset, like we're talking about various games from the WotC turn at the turn of the century. Who's to say that you give your party a slog to go into, and for 3 months you build up, or for 4 game sessions you'll build up to this slog, and they do everything right during the battle and they come out ahead. They'll spend 1.5 sessions beating up something, and combat rounds in Pathfinder take forever, so 1.5 sessions. But at the end of that, instead of giving those players new loot or a new shiny magic item, or, oh my god, this spell. No. What you do is, when you start your game, you restrict it heavily. Keep it to the core rulebook, races and classes. But at the end of the said battle, bridging from 5th to 6th level, you give the players the ability to pick a race that's not in the player's handbook. It's like, say, the Ratkin, or Lizardmen, or something different, and give them access to a couple classes that actually are designed well, and not shitty thoughts that they just put to paper without playtesting, like what Paizo would do. I'm not picking on Paizo, but I'll punch him in the face every day of the week. Okay. I'm just saying that you can give the players new options for character creations, for party integration, for doing something that was story related. You can have a mechanical option.
So what I'm really trying to get at, though,
we're trying to get at is, how do we reward people in
what I'm trying to get at is, like, because of the way that some of these older editions of D&D were designed, particularly, I think the problem, like, kind of started in a little bit in maybe 2.5, but really ramped up to being an issue in 3rd edition, where you were getting magic items out the ass. Yeah. Everything you got was magical. It builds that expectation that, you're going to constantly get this new shiny gear or this new shiny upgrade. It's going to outdo what you had before, blah, 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 this and that. It's been lessened a bit with 5th edition for sure, because of how they changed the way some of that stuff works. But honestly, most of the 5e games I've been a player in, or most of those games, the games I run, I tend to hold pretty true to a lot of the rules on how the magic items are supposed to work, particularly the why am I blanking on what it is? Attunements.
I like that ruling. I really like that.
So you can't overload yourself with like a million different items like you could, especially in 3rd.
Right.
But I've seen plenty of games where people ignore that, and frankly, it completely breaks 5e to do that. Like it
Right.
totally destroys the game. Which, I mean, arguably at high levels it was anyway, but that's besides the point. What I was touching on, what I was glad you brought up that point about, hey, your players could take the time to build this trestle and access this new place that they've never been to before. Why I was glad you made that point, Bruce, is because that's kind of what I've noticed is in a lot of the other genres, you have to rely a little bit more on things like that. You can't really just give out like a whole bunch of new items, new gear, all that stuff. Or this is a perfect way of putting it, Kai says, you can't rely on the Diablo syndrome, the loot RPG thing, because a lot of that loot, I mean, yeah, it's new and nice and like, hey, cool, you got this new thing. Mechanically, that is not very different from the thing you've already been using. And let's face it, if it's a more combat-focused game, you probably have abilities and stuff that are built to work with what you were already using. So you're going to be possibly disincentivized from taking something new.
So
yeah. Sorry, I agree. I'm laughing at the Diablo thing.
For me, one of the best things I can think of in terms of like a sci-fi game that I played, sci-fi fantasy, Star Wars. When I was playing in a game that one of my friends was running years back, we got about, I think, to level 7 or 8. We'd been having to rent rides on ships on like basically public transits to get to other planets until we finally got into a situation where we were able to afford our own. It took us a long time to work up enough credits to buy our own ship. And that was a huge reward for us. Like that was a major moment where it's like, hey, here's this one big item. All of you can use it. And now you have unlocked all of this stuff that you can access.
That sounds great.
And that is awesome. I mean, we're on Sci-Fi. We're doing Sci-Fi. I wanted to say something, but
this is just like, this isn't specifically Sci-Fi. This is rewarding outside of the typical normal, like, hey, you don't have the list of 1,000 magic items to rely on anymore. What are you going to give to your players to make them feel rewarded and engaged for what they're doing?
I was in college, like the first or second time I ever sat down at a table to roll dice was back in college, and this is right when Pirates of the Caribbean just blew up. Johnny Depp's first one, and one of the friends I had is like, "Hey, I'm running a pirate campaign," and everybody's like, "Ooh, Pirates of the Caribbean! I want to be Jack Sparrow." That has very little magic in it. It had fantasy, very little magic in it, and it wasn't everybody has a magical item. And this was 3.5, Dave, right before they pumped out the item companion book, I think it was called. Anyways, so we're on the boat. Nothing's magical on the boat. No magical this, no magical wind. Everything was modern, not modern, historically accurate type of, not modern, that's not right. Well, technically, anyways, it doesn't matter.
Like historically,
right.
Not necessarily historically accurate, but historically relevant almost. I guess you could maybe say like
there was a few magical items in it, but the players never got a hold of them. It was the MacGuffin. We have to go to this to get a key to unlock this. Very much kind of followed the movies. I think the DM was kind of lazy in the writing, but that's just me. And it was really cool, but it did not have, okay, you guys went to war with another ship. What's your reward? We got another ship. Anything magical on that ship? No, you just got another ship.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of a different reward, or social contracts. A lot of the other games reward you in not just stuff, but improving your skills or improving your reputation or making contacts or social contracts.
Right.
D&D is pretty much kind of alone in the idea that your reward is EP and stuff. A lot of, most of the other games reward you in other ways because they came at it looking from the idea that you're not going to get the magic sword. A superhero role-playing game doesn't reward you with a magic sword. It rewards you with the ability to make your powers better, learn more skills, get better karma, get better reactions from the crowd, have, mechanics that alter the dice so you can do superhero stuff. Cyberpunk rewards you with contacts, with new flashy gear, with reputation. Space games reward you with better tech, better ships, better contacts, better money, other stuff. Yes, bottle caps. So
I think that's No, sorry.
And then Wizards of the Coast claims that the direction they want to take D&D is now post Strixhaven all about social contacts and relationships and not about EP and stuff.
I've actually had a chance to I have 3 kids, and my youngest, my daughter, is very much into the Harry Potter thing. Harry Potter, she loves the books. So I got a hold of that the latest WotC book that came out about being in a magic college, and I was thinking about what, yeah. So I'm thinking about doing maybe a couple games for my kids where you want to be Harry Potter, you want to go to Hogwarts or whatever. I can make this happen. I'm just going to use the tools that are in this box and give them a facelift.
You'll probably need to buy about 4 college rule notebooks to add stuff to that college to make it fun, because that's the one ingredient that they didn't put between the covers.
That's fine, but that's my job as a DM.
Yeah,
but there's a purpose to writing a campaign book or adventure, and
it's
that's
not a campaign book, it's a module.
Module, adventure, whatever. It's not fun. What they put between the covers will bore you. It's like watching McNeil Lair Hour.
You read it?
I read the first 3 chapters because I was at the store about a month ago, and it looked like absolute shit. There's other modules or adventures I've read, like the Tiamat one that Kobold Press first put out. That was pretty okay. Then they put out a rehash of Against the Giants, I think, and that was again pretty okay. But this is like the B team from Wizards came out and said, and now we're gonna play a game called Dungeons and Discussions, and it all sucks. And you basically have nothing to do but be a kid in a school, and there's no adventure. There's no time with a mentor. You don't get to spend time blowing up beakers full of water. It's boring.
I'd say probably the biggest problem with it is and this is something Grimm touched on in his review, is that for this setting of a magic college, they give no suggestions, no rules, none of that stuff.
No lore.
For new ways to learn magic.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah. If it was supposed to be a setting guide.
I actually have to sit down and read the book. Like I said, I just thumbed through it. It was like, hey, this is a novel idea that I can make. I can work to work for what I need it to be. It's use it more as a guideline and not an absolute. Because the moment you use anything as an absolute, I think it ruins games.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I hate the rule of cool. If it seems like it's cool, I'm going to allow it. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah, the rule of cool needs to be used within reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I think we've effectively touched on how you reward players in these other games, because most of these other games, these other genres, they're not going to have the giant list of magic items. I think part of what I was trying to touch on with this too is the fact, with D&D being so dominant, there is kind of that expectation, like you're going to get the shiny new magic sword, you're going to get the shiny magic armor, you're going to get these things. So when players are trying out these new genres and they don't get that, it can lead to some expectations of like, I'm not as interested, I'm not getting this cool stuff. So it's just a matter of, I guess it kind of falls to us as game masters. We need to sort of curb that expectation so that they understand, like, hey, the rewards you're going to get in these types of games, it's not going to be the Diablo style pile of loot. It's going to be something different. It's going to be something more intangible that's going to give you more options. You got to actually engage with it.
Yeah, a deeper story to tell. Tragedy, triumph, character growth. Your rewards are not just stuff, though they're obviously.
I almost feel like Crafty was so excited to join in this one. I almost feel like we might need to do a part 2 of this at some point, just so he can get his thoughts in.
Yeah, Cal, I got to agree with what Cal Bonelli just said. That one.
Yeah.
If
If you're gonna put a product out and have a $50 price tag on it, or $35 price tag, make it worth the fucking while for people to put the money out of their wallet at the counter.
No, that is absolutely.
Well, if I mean, the sales are supposedly bad.
It makes me happy the sales are bad. It makes me happy
that might or might not be true. Yeah.
You say Diablo, and I keep giggling only because you say loot, and I'm like, where were you getting loot at? I killed that little horde goblin each and every time, and everybody else got shit. I got screwed every time.
I got a plastic fake leg. You want it?
No, and that's kind of the thing. That's partly why this right here is partly why I was talking about that Diablo-sized pile of loot, because I remember playing those older editions where you got shit tons of loot, and how fast some of that shit would just become obsolete, and you would trash it for something new.
Oh yeah, no, it's like, well, the barbarian gets this, the fighter gets this. I'm playing the wizard. The wizard gets shit. Quite literally, a bag full of nothing I can use. And so every time you said Diablo, that's just I hate Diablo.
Yeah.
I don't hate Diablo. I have shitty luck when it comes to Diablo.
Yeah. Well, all right.
But I really like the idea, like for Star Wars, like
my boy's here. What's up, Luke?
Whenever you do something in Star Wars and you get rewarded, Star Wars is a neat game because you can decide as a GM it's time to give out skill points. And I'm talking about D6, okay? I don't talk about the D20 stuff. You give out skill points. You get resources. You get crates of material that the players really can't use right now, but it goes in the cargo hold. And it might occupy that cargo hold for 3 months while you're trying to find a buyer. And or for you guys that play Traveler, you might want to get your broker out and have him roll a few die and see if he can offload it somewhere. And then you've got the trip of you've got to make it go from here to there, and you've got to deliver it to pick up whatever items you want that the broker set up for you. But for Star Wars, you have some for anything not D&D. As a GM, it's easy. It's almost way too easy to give the players a reward, because that reward comes with a hook, and that's another story. That's another adventure, because now they have to go and deliver it, or now they have to take these cattle to this other system and put them on this Class M planet, so the cattle can be part of the beef industry over there, and you'll get your reward there, which might lead you to another guy with a hook, and he kites the players along and says, "You're going on this Kessel run, blah blah blah," something like that. But in Star Wars, I always felt like it was all too easy. If I was having a shit night, I was still able to pull out ideas for the players to do adventures. Even if I wasn't feeling a lot of inspiration, I was able to give them a place to go, something to do, and there'd be risks involved, and they'd meet new players, new characters. They'd have new options afterwards. And I always felt that Sci-Fi was the easiest and best type of RPG to play, because you always had this galaxy as your oyster. When you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you're stuck in Hamlet, and there's a road that leads you to a gate or a moat house, and that moat house has a dragon in it and an old paladin that's trying to kill you, and you don't have much else. You could try to walk somewhere else, but your GM's like, "Oh, the cattle fence is pretty prickly with its barbed wire. It kind of ruins your mail as you're trying to get over it, and your chainmail is now broken. Oh, I guess we better go back to the dungeon, guys." But in Sci-Fi, you can literally take the players anywhere. And
you could take the players anywhere in fantasy or choose not to. You can take the players anywhere in sci-fi or choose not to. I could keep you bound on Tatooine for 16 episodes if I want.
And in Tatooine,
that happened to me once.
Adventure are there? There's probably over 100 episodes of adventure.
Yeah, and there's 100 episodes in fantasy, so that's sort of not the point. The point is what is the rewards?
Well,
how do we get people out of the EP and stuff mindset and make them want to play these other games?
Two things really I want to jump in here really quick and let you guys get back into it, but it's still on point. treasure. For example, I had a DM that had us do a dungeon crawl. Absolutely no treasure in it, but the gate doors. The gate doors were 1,000 pounds doors made of pure mithril. And the party spent like 2 sessions. I shit you not. 2 sessions. How are we going to get those mithril doors that's like 10 feet tall, and there's 2 of them, to the next town over to get the cash? Because there was no treasure inside. I broke something. Somebody sundered something, and my weapon's no longer usable. This dungeon, whatever, screwed me. I thought that was a very interesting concept. The second of all, and this is fantasy because this is really it's fantasy, but the payout's weird. Is the not modern? It might be the newest version, or it might be the second newest version of Lord of the Rings, which has nothing to do with the movies, but it's Lord of the Rings, where if you're a venturer, how do you make your money in most of these campaigns? You rob people, you kill. You take what loot that they have, right? You can't do that in Lord of the Rings. There is no real magical items in Lord of the Rings. There is magic, but you're not allowed to use it in Lord of the Rings. So
I'm going to just say real quick, OG, the reward, and I'll just cut and paste from one of my favorite movies as a child, Space Hunter. The reward that he gets after going through 90 minutes of perilous adventure with Molly Ringwald, that guy gets to rescue the damsels in distress. He might be stuck on that planet or have a crappy ship with a crappy hyperdrive, but after he has waded through all manner of trials and tribulations with Molly Ringwald at her absolute brattiest before she became cool, he gets rewarded with knowing that, 1, he defeated the bad guy, and 2, he actually rescued a damsel in distress. So you actually have a classic tale in one of the worst movies ever made.
What was this movie?
Space Hunter 3D.
How the hell did I miss this
Space
one?
Hunter 3D, The Adventures of Jared Sin.
How the hell did I miss this one?
One of the worst movies of all time, but it's beautiful.
Is it up there with Mom and Dad Save the Universe?
It's as good as Ice Pirates.
Oh.
Ooh, yeah, that's good.
See, I mean, honestly, modern day movies, I like Kingsman, the award at the end of the day. But that's just me. Have you seen that movie, Bruce?
Which one?
The Kingsman.
The
new one?
first one?
The one with Samuel Jackson in it.
Yes,
The first
I
one,
know what reward you're talking of, and I would prefer that one too.
I don't know if this is a rated show, so I'm keeping it PG-13 on my side.
It's like I said in the chat at the start. I don't care. I honestly do not give a fuck how offensive you want to be on my channel. It makes
Okay.
no
I
difference to me.
I do. But
The only thing I take an issue with is spammers. I won't fucking abide that shit.
No, and I completely agree. It's just, like Bruce's, when I'm a little bit more relaxed on Bruce, I just met you tonight, and I always give the same courtesies I give to anybody else I just met. I will keep myself at PG-13 because I can hit a hard R really fucking quick if somebody breaks my gear hard enough.
I'm not monetized anyway. What do I care?
Okay. So the moral of the story: if you save the day, you get to lay the princess. That is the best award whatsoever.
that's a reward. Yeah.
That should be an award.
That is a reward. How is it not? How is that not a reward?
Although, if you really want to fuck with your players, you could do the whole Robot Chicken Legend of Zelda skit.
Oh my god!
And make it so that Link is like the 9th one that's rescued her, and it took him 80 hours, and she makes fun of him for it.
Oh, the first one.
I got 8 rupees. Take them for your time.
What? No, I kind of. A friend of mine was running a rescue the damsels type campaign, and I don't know what was wrong with my character. I was having an off day, and he cheekily said, "Aren't you kind of fat to be an adventurer?" And I fired back, "Well, you can sit here and write, you stuck up bitch." And I just walked away.
Crafty, even if the princess ends up being your sister. I wonder
You
what
don't
bad
find out
man
until
you're
movie
talking about
3.
there.
So
Yeah. I think I think the rewards in modern games tend to try to throw things out there as loot, a shinier sword, a bigger gun, a nicer car you can look swank in, or cybernetics that make you swole and attractive, and you look like Keanu Reeves. I mean Johnny Silverhand. I think a lot of new games are going that route, but I think it's better off if we as GMs curate that in our own tables and we show people it's better to have the option. You can go with the shinier, bigger sword or with the cybernetics or whatever garbage shit you want. But wouldn't you rather have a character that basically does a sabbatical for 7 months with the party, and 7 months pass and you guys build this trestle across a chasm, or you build your hyperdrive, and after you do that, now you have a bridge to adventure, and you have 20 times the options you had before. Yeah, you can do damn near everything in fantasy. Oh, I found a portal. It takes me to the Nexus world where there's portals to everywhere.
Yeah.
But you want to make the players feel like they've worked and labored for it. Otherwise, it means nothing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I kind of like the idea of the traveler one, where you moving whatever from planet to planet, and your reward is reputation at most, or dysentery, depends on how the trail goes. But no, I like the out of box. I really do. Even as a DM, I like the out of box. Well, this is what you guys are get for pulling off this job. Either it being a reputation boost, it being a handful of loot. It doesn't always have to be magic. It should always be magic. Magic should be rare. It should be not super rare, but magic, sword, magic, whatever should be a.
no. Finish this. I'll.
What?
Before it.
Oh, no. See, for some reason, we play a game where 80% of our classes are all magical whack jobs. And where we all have magical crafting skills, and the wizards and clerics and druids and everybody else has magical wiggle finger bullshit. But don't worry, we all can go, magic is still rare. Nobody knows how to make magic items. Nobody knows how to make magic swords. So God help you. So we don't give out magic loot. But even though the fact that half of our party farts magic sparkles and we can teleport halfway around the world, and the wizard is bored and goes, screw this dimension, I'm gone. You know what? And the cleric goes, I'm praying to my God for fucking help. And God goes, well, you have a 1 in 4 chance of me lying to you, but you don't know what, here's your help. And yet we still sit back and go, oh, magic's rare. We're a low magic fantasy setting. Bullshit. D&D is not low magic, even though all of us GMs wish it was. So there's no way we have a vending shop. But don't worry, all of our random loot tables have. Well, you killed 4 you killed 4 orcs over here, and one of them has magical chainmail. Well, I can't wear magical chainmail. I guess we gotta sell it. Oh, you can't sell it. There's no vendor who's got money well enough to be able to pay you. What was that?
I can't wear magical chainmail. I've got herpes.
I know. And like, well, my class doesn't have that. Well, and the barbarian, well, I already have wearing that. Well, fuck off. And so we end up having piles and piles of magical bullshit lying around in a giant heap in the event that we find the one magical Walmart we can dump it all off on. It's like a magical pawn shop. And now we have all the money in the universe. And yet somehow we always go, there's not enough magic just is so rare. It's so rare. But we have 8 casters in our party. And we know 15 more. And we've killed 20. And we stabbed at least 14 other magic users in the last dungeon we were in. Because everything's magical bullshit.
Hey, Kai, have you looked up the settings on Salt in Wounds?
No.
Okay.
Go look that up. Go look that up. And come back and tell me what you think about it.
Oh,
Now-
there we go.
Another thing here is that I have not been playing a lot of 5e. I've been seeing this problems. GMs have been like laying on the crutch of Magic being everything since like at least 3rd edition, or if not
Oh,
earlier
absolutely.
than that. Monsters
No,
have
it's
magic.
It's been since 2nd edition.
That
It
is
So
absolutely
monsters
that's-
have-
2nd edition.
It's second
Oh, wait,
edition.
wait. Before we say that edition too many times, we might have to have Mac show up because saying second edition is like saying Beetlejuice. Say 3 times.
Well,
and Mac will show up.
no.
Maxwell Chevy's.
Second edition might do that. You got a 50-50 shot of that incantation
Chance
working.
of
If you really
shatter.
want to do it, you say Earthbound 3 times. And then you drink.
Oh, Earth. Yeah, I don't know if you called it, but I screwed up and said Earth Down. I called it Earth Dong a couple podcasts ago. So yeah. No, you're right. Earth Dawn would definitely, say that X amount of times.
Or
And
Chimerian.
you're right. And you're right. It is bad GMs, but bad GMs are everywhere because how often when we're playing and we're having our adventures that when the GM runs into the I'm too stupid, overworked, tired, or my caffeine ran out, and then suddenly magical bullshit happens. Why? Because a wizard did it. And suddenly, but this is a low fantasy setting with flying castles, dragons, and 25 wizards who are all it's ugh.
Another side of it too is just the fact that obviously some games are not well built to run some styles and settings. 5th edition is not well built to run low magic. Pathfinder is not well built to run low magic.
Yeah, that is
Can you?
absolutely true. It is
Yeah,
not a
can
low
you do
magic
it?
game. Do not try and make it a low magic game.
Oh,
Yeah, well,
and the bad
can you do
Yeah.
it? Yes.
no, yes, but no.
Better be ready to knuckle down and put the fucking work in, though.
Yeah,
Or
and the
just
bad part
find
is
the
that
system that does what you want. Why try and make 5e into something it's not? I hate to be the
Well,
yeah,
5e
and
enthusiast.
then you have GM like, and then you have players who who look at forums and they like, well, this encounter was designed for players of X level with X stats and with X gear and gearing, and then because you've been trying to be not draw back the magic, and then you got that player sitting back going, we haven't got any good gear upgrades in the last 3 levels. And I'm like, because I'm trying to I run a low magic setting, and then like, well, we're still not high enough. Our gear's not good enough for the to handle the encounters that are coming up here. And I'm like, you've been beating the ass out of everything that of your level +2. Oh my god! And you're whining about the fact that you're not geared enough? Well, we're not. Fuck you and your loot and your need for loot. But everyone wants to have it because obviously some autistic raptor has been sitting there on the forums doing all his math all day. And he's like, well, this is the official equations on how everything's been built out to make this. And I'm like, fuck off. All of this is, god damn.
Welcome to WotC edition D&D, kids.
Kai, I if I ever do a local game, you're definitely invited. And at the end of every session, you can tell me what I did wrong.
Oh, no.
Don't worry
If I
about
get to
that.
play a game,
Don't
if I get
worry
to play
about
a game, I won't complain at all.
What was that, Kai?
If I get to play a game, I won't complain because I get to actually get to play a game.
Yeah, that's my problem right now. The only games, I'm in 2 games. One game on Monday every other week. Then there's Bruce games, which I believe you're deeming my games tomorrow.
Okay.
Saturday.
And okay, you're right, Rasputin. I'm sorry about the fact that I did divert there. But the thing was that was also kind of leading off of the fact that loot really is what drives a lot of things. And so when you're trying to get out of that fantasy, what I wanted to jump in on was actually to say, I mostly run, say, more Age of Reason, steampunking, Victorian age D&D in the Victorian age. You still have a lot of the mentality, the classes, the idea, everything can still work, but you're now kind of rolling back. Now your loot can be a lost spell tome. Here's some equations. Here's parts of an equation that could lead to a new massive Magitech spell engine. It's like steam powered and like an autocaster. You start seeing new things, looting. Like rewards can actually be land holdings, titles, heck, a colony somewhere else. You can start pushing away towards it. And
you mentioned in the chat earlier how you've got a pirate flag hanging behind you, and for good reason. I'm actually playing in with one of the guys in chat here with Coyote. I'm playing in a pirate game.
Yeah, there it
with
is.
Him that's being run by a friend of ours, and our friend who's running that game has been, he's given us some substantial rewards despite the fact that we're low level. But the nice thing is, it's like, yeah, we earned a ship when we were relatively low level that we now have to work to maintain. We got to put that money into it. We got to put the time into it. And it's as a long-term investment that's going to enable us to explore the world.
Oh, yeah.
But it requires that work.
And and you need to have all that
fucking
work.
Satisfying.
I don't, especially when you have players who come in there and you go, well, we need to figure out, paying for your sailmaker, your purser, your and all the various I got written down somewhere all the weird content you work with. It's expensive to run a sailing ship, and it's beautiful.
We have wrecked the ship trying to claim the thing too, so we had to do a lot of work.
Back to the pirate campaign. At the end of every 4 sessions, the DM would say, okay, for repairs and everything else, there was a set amount of gold that you had to set aside to keep the ship going. It was so it was a 3.5 day. So everything XP gold was divided by the party. Well, it being a 4-person party, it became a 5-person party because the ship by itself is its own character. It gets upgrades as the time goes by. It has it needs its own gold for it to pursue. And honestly, if you're running a campaign where your main transportation being a ship that's in the ocean or a ship that's in the sky or in space, it should get percentage of the loot just to keep the fucking going. It is worth its weight in gold.
And the share.
And the thing is, all of this opens up as you start moving away from traditional fantasy, which unfortunately is almost always land-based, always starting you in some hamlet, middle of nowhere, and you eventually move up to a bigger town, capital, and you work way up. The thing is, as you start getting up into out of medieval fantasy, out of Renaissance medieval fantasy, you start having to open up the idea that sailing becomes an option. As you go further up in time, you now have rail. The amount of land you've got to work at becomes greater. The amount of access, the ways players have an ability to tell you no and to leave and go somewhere else becomes ever more greater. When you're playing like Cyberpunk or Shadowrun, your players can always look at you and look at your weird ass plot and go, yeah, no, we're getting on the suborbital rocket plane and going to Hong Kong.
Then I just moved my plot to Hong Kong.
And exactly. But now they've left the current mess and they're now somewhere else.
Bottom and push it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right. And but the thing is, that's like teleport, but now you don't need to just have one wizard do it. You just need to be able to pay $500 and pass a security scanner, and now you're somewhere else.
And then I just move the adventure to where they are.
Right. But the thing is, those are rewards that you can actually hand out. Transportation is a fantastic reward. Just handing out access to a factory or an inventor is an amazing reward that you just don't get to have options like, okay, you have a blacksmith who can make something for you in fantasy. Yeah, cool. Or you can just have that one player who's like, he's spent his time and his effort. He's now building a monstrous, horrible coal belching monster foundry, and he's going to build war machines to conquer the world. Let the player do it. He's going to have more fun. But the thing is, now you've moved out of fantasy. Now you can think in terms that are more greater than simply 5 adventurers meet in a bar and go off into a cave. Well, now it's 5 adventurers be at a society or call together, and then they go off on a cool adventure. You can have a lot of fun, and the rewards can all reflect the fact that you're not stuck in the ruins of Rome.
That's one thing about Deadlands in particular that I really like is that idea of, your transit, your means of transportation, how you get from place to place can be a huge reward because
yes,
you can sit there and be cheap
yeah.
with your transit. You can sit there and take shortcuts, but there's mechanics built into the game for buying your stuff el cheapo, as they put it, and how quickly it can break or how fast your horse can die for buying a cheap, sick horse. And you decided you wanted to ride your horse from the east side of Oklahoma all the way to San Francisco? Better be prepared to deal with being saddle sore. Invest in a wagon.
See, I consider that common sense DMing, and I've said this multiple times in these podcasts. As I believe in common sense DMing. If you're having a party, and I know I've beaten this horse to death. But if you're having a party that wants to camp outside and they don't start a fire to stay warm throughout the night, they'll get a -2 to their con saves the next day. But why? Because you did something stupid the night before. I love common sense DMing. You buy a horse and you run it that long, you're going to kill the fucking horse. Fuck saddle sore. You're going to be walking the last bit of it.
But by the time you get over to New Mexico, the horse is totally lame and you're on foot. Have fun.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, I was about ready to have a Kai moment and just keep running with this. But anyways.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it's like you have those options with Deadlands that are built in. It's like, you can spend your money cheap or you can spend it expensive. How big of an investment do you want to make? Do you want to take that risk of the equipment you're buying breaking because you want this specific piece of equipment? Yeah. Or do you want to wait a little bit, earn a little more money, work with what you've got, and then get that better piece of equipment, that same type of thing, but better, and actually get more use out of it?
See, I love Deadlands, but when I hear of Deadlands, I'm like, give me the cards and chips version. Give me the good version, not the fucking Savage Worlds bullshit. I know.
I mean, if you ever get a chance to look for it and look at it, just take a look at Castle Falkenstein, an amazing fantasy game it's just unconventional, but it's just fun and it's different. And
it had siege a castle with Nazi orcs, right?
What was that?
Didn't Falkenstein have you sieging the castle with Nazi orcs?
No, actually, Castle Falkenstein is you trying to help the King of Bavaria resist a dark fairy influenced Bismarck from being able to unify Germany and invade France during the Victorian era. So it's very crazy. You have dragons, airships, tanks, artillery pieces. Nikola Tesla and Jules Verne. You have ships, Sherlock Holmes, and everything else is running around. And you have wizards, duels, sword fighting, and it's literally the 1870s. America is recovering from the Civil War, and it's a beautiful, horrifying mess. And it'll give you a wonderful take on how to run fantasy in a world that's not locked in. Everything is muck covered, and everyone's uneducated, and a few wizards walk around, and a few clerics walk around, because clerics and wizards exist. They sure the hell do, and it's a fun take on all of that without having the trappings that is Dungeons and Dragons to hold you back.
Yeah. You're moving that general fantasy genre to a later time period to give yourself more options, different options, and a whole different style, which kind of leads me into something else I wanted to talk about, is like the idea of, genre blending. If you're not happy with the way a specific genre that you want is fully working for you, mix something else in there. There's a reason why things like sci-fi fantasy exist, dark fantasy exist, comedy horror exists.
Yeah.
Genre blending happens. Yeah, exactly. Like, fucking A, Deadlands again. I'm sorry, Bruce. I'm going to trigger you with Deadlands again.
I'm going to give you a red poker chip.
It's it's Western dark fantasy horror.
There's a video game I played a little bit ago. Red Dawn.
No idea.
Red. You played what was it?
Grim Dawn.
Red Dead Redemption.
Yes. There's been actually a couple Western campaigns. I've always loved the romantic Western stories. I've never got to play one in any of the campaigns I'm in because no one really runs those.
Yeah.
But
how many copies of Boot Hill still exist?
Exists? Considering none of them ever sold, probably a lot.
But this falls under the other thing. Do I really want to run a Western or would I really want to play in it? Because if I have to DM it, then fuck my life. But if I can play in it, that's cool.
Andy's going to run Blazing Saddles, everybody.
That would be fun. But you know what? For every fucking, I can't say that because it's culturally sensitive. Fuck off. You know what you're getting, Quinn, if you're in a game with me.
All right. I finally got my hands on this.
Awesome.
Yeah, hell yeah.
There's a passage in here. I'll just bring it up on my phone because I took a picture of it.
Wait,
I was going to share it in the Discord, but I decided just in case to save it for tonight. There's a passage in here that made me very happy when I read it. One's goal, demeanor, and manner need not match that of our titular hero. What matters is that whatever character you create, he or she is an icon of their type. If you create a zealous inquisitor, play him as such. Insist on strapping infidels to the rag and forcing confessions from their lips. If you play an American Indian, show his savage and brutal side as well as his nobility. Play your hero to the fullest and don't be afraid to be a stereotype, at least on the surface.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Here we go. Okay. So yeah, stereotyping is fun. The problem with stereotyping is most of it's not true, but some of it really is. I'm Irish and plus, but I'm mainly Irish. Guess what I like to do? I like to drink. If my award at the end of the day is a fucking 6-pack, hell fucking yes. Well, we're gonna get gold and wine. Fuck the wine. Where's my gold? Fuck that. Where's my whiskey? Where's the blackjack and hookers? Screw the blackjack. Where's the fucking hookers? Yeah, we're opening up a fucking brothel. This is my campaign. Fuck off. But you can't do that.
Let me just
bring
this one back up again.
Yeah, fucking Bruce's game years ago. I went round and round with the rest of the party. We're playing Kingmakers. We're opening up a society. We want a small kingdom. Where's the fucking brothel at? Well, we're not that kind of society. Like the fuck you aren't.
Yeah. Even the most civilized cities, you got brothels.
We're not. I am.
Yeah. Well, here's a little history lesson for those who are watching the show. You know what won the West? It wasn't the guns. It wasn't even, the blankets we gave those poor bastards. It was the whorehouses. Because whorehouses bring in money. Money makes the world run. So fuck off. Get off your cross. We need the wood.
In more ways than one.
Oh, fucking Kai's been a bad influence on me. I've been.
I'm sorry, really am. I am.
No, don't be.
No. This is making it more fun for me.
See, don't apologize because the reason why me and Bruce are really friends is he loves this side of me. But I don't do this very often because I try to be a better person. Well, being a better person fucks good DMs.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
Oh, yes. Pussy did win the West. You're absolutely right, Kraft. But here's the thing. The best award I ever got, and the rest of the party had a huge problem with it. In most of my campaigns, if my character can smoke a fucking stogie, I'll fucking smoke a fucking stogie. Give me my beer and my stogie. Well, as an award for doing this wizard gives you a magic cigar. Yeah, what does it do? It's a cigar that after each smoke, it magically recreates itself. It has whatever the spell is.
Troll regeneration or something.
Yeah. That was my reward. Fuck the gold. Fuck your magic sword. I don't have to buy another fucking cigar a day in my life. That is the best reward ever. Hell yeah. Let's be a little bit about what we do.
The great thing with a reward like that, it's a clever GM can really inspire you to go to great lengths to get it back when someone takes it away from you.
I will kill a motherfucker. Don't fuck with my cigars.
Oops.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I gotta ask.
All good.
First off, OG, what is Suede?
Savage Worlds Adventure Edition.
Savage World Adventure Edition.
Okay.
It's
You know,
honestly
Steve,
pretty
I
good.
I still need to get my hands on it, honestly.
Savage World is awesome.
But yeah,
Oh, I love Savage Worlds.
Weird Wars is pretty much what it sounds like. It is in its earlier incarnations. It was pretty much Dungeons and Dragons meets World War II.
Yeah.
But as the game has gotten
was more
older,
World
it's
War
gotten
II.
more wars. But if you are interested in a really creative set of modules for third edition, which can be transferred over to Pathfinder pretty easily, you can literally have haunted B-17s, ghost tanks, U-boats that are crewed by the undead. So you get so you're literally having members of what is in essence the future CIA or the military intelligence who are employing wizards and clerics who are trying to turn undead submarines that are hunting your convoys, or you're in a bomber being chased by undead Nazi fighter pilots, and you're trying to do your best in a war that's gone really, really crazy, and while everyone's going insane around you, and it's this bizarre thing. And as the book series progressed, you also got the Eastern Front. Oh dear God! If you want to play Russians fighting Nazi weird super science, and now you got Father Winter, who's literally an actual creature that can actually kill you, and Baba Yaga, who will beat you up and is great. Or you can also deal with the Pacific, and things get crazy. And if you ever thought about D&D being this thing, like, D&D is not deadly enough, add 152 millimeter guns to your game. Add 16-inch naval rifles to your game, and suddenly you're like, you know what? I think I'm doing pretty good. Why? Because I'm not eating an 88 millimeter tungsten round to the chest, which is a great way of telling your fighter to slow the fuck down.
See,
Yeah.
I agree. Oh God, I immensely agree. I like campaigns that were. Me as a person, I don't particularly am a gun person, but I appreciate what they are. And I think Pathfinder dropped the fucking ball when they said guns do touch damage, not AC damage. I'm like, no. They still have to punch through the armor that the guy is wearing, unless it's a.
But if you're playing with the Weird Wars rules, your guns really do that, but they will also ignore damage reduction to a certain level. So therefore, I'm hiding behind a wall. 50 caliber says no, the wall's not there no more. And what?
50 caliber kills a building.
50 caliber kills you and the guy hiding next to you. So you have a good day. Move on.
Yeah.
And so if you want to keep with Dungeons and Dragons and get an idea of what hellish experience when your wizards is like, I can cast Fireball, and then somebody shoots a flamethrower in his face, and somebody's like, Fireball doesn't sound so cool anymore.
I wish I could remember the name of it, but there was an anime that was made a few years ago where pretty much it was like the entire premise of like, and pretty much the whole thing existed just to basically be military porn against fantasy. It's like, here's the modern military. Here's your wizards. Here's what the Apache helicopter did to them.
Oh yeah.
Do you have a dragon? This is what a platoon of M1 Abrams do to it. It dies. Okay, what the fuck? And it's like, yes, Gate is an anime that just shows you why you don't mix genres, unless you really want to mix genres, and then it's just fun.
Sorry, Discord. There was something that just popped up in Discord. I just lost.
I know what it is.
Woo, buddy! I need bring me my white pants. But anyways, fuck. Anyway, stay on topic. Yeah, no, guns are a very interesting added. You know what? There is only one gun creation. Your loot is to find that fucking gun. Now you found the gun, you don't know how to work it because you're not efficient in fucking gunsmithing. Into the West.
Are we playing Knife Fight City now? Okay, this sounds like fun.
Have you guys read this book series by Harry Turtledove?
No, so it's on my list.
It's on your list now.
It's on my list now.
Okay, I'm adding to my list.
It's World War One. If World War One had magic, like certain nations hire the Kraken to destroy certain shipping convoys, and another nation starts to siege a neighboring nation, and it just goes all sorts of fucked up. It's a nice kind of low magic, but very well done fantasy reflection of World War One. Mixed genres, did you say? Yeah, this guy's a master at it.
Well,
See, yeah,
he's also the master at alternate histories. So yeah.
Okay. Whew, I can breathe again. Holy crap.
No.
But no, mixing genres fun. I love the concept of it. Do a Western fantasy. Doing a historical. Let's say Doc Holliday was really a vampire or whatever. Because the only time you saw them, except for the OK Corral, the only time people really saw them was at night drinking at the saloons.
And that's the fun part if you when you start mixing things like that. Because it's like I honestly look at the fact that we do have enough of our mythology set to Westerns, that we do have RPGs set in the West that do have weird magic. So you might as well embrace that and have some fun. But you can also move a little bit further. You can also just go. Do you also want to explore the? I don't want to go full World of Darkness here, but with the whole hidden fantasy idea, which is a modern trope across most of the urban fantasy genre, which is simply, how do you have magic without everyone noticing? Well, you still have this hidden society. It's all got all these rules. So you have this borderline masquerade, borderline Mage the Ascension thing going on here, where everyone's trying to hide the fact that if the humans ever find out, bad shit happens. Or you can run with that. So it's like, or you have that Dresden Files feel to it, or there's a whole slew of novels.
Oh my god, fucking Dresden Files. I've ran campaigns loosely based on that world, as I said before.
And yes, I know he's loony, but the thing is that it's a fun idea of the setting that you can play with.
Yeah. I mean, even modern day, you can do fantasy in modern day. It really is. But there's like by Harry Potter, there's the people who know that magic exists, and there's the Muggles. You could do it in modern day. It's not that hard. You basically,
and
just have to be flexible to a certain degree.
And I'm just gonna take a page from Dresden. What's usually his reward that he gets at the end of an adventure? His rent's paid for another month. That's literally what you're fighting for. It's like, what are you fighting for? I don't want to be homeless, and I want my car to work. So I need gas, and I need my rent. So I'm going to take a dirty, useless job that's going to end up being some horrible hell beast that involves weird creatures, magic, and vampires. And well, fuck it. I'm the only.
It's pretty much hitting on the exact reason why I always enjoyed like reading and watching John Constantine. Why do I deal with magic and demons? Because I want booze, I want cigarettes, and I want to pay my rent.
Exactly. So
what was it? I love Jim Butcher. I'd love to meet the man in person. I know Chicago. I know where the Dresden is based out of. And I love the idea that anything that was made after the 1940s technology-wise doesn't work around him because he's a wizard. I love that concept. I like that. Go for it.
Yeah. And so to draw back into what kind of reward do you give your players? Just make sure you hammer home that, sure, you found the coolest badass sword in the entire universe. No one's going to believe you have a bat. Why are you carrying a badass sword in the modern day? Put that away. You might get some weird ass looks. Plus, what are you going to do? Go to the pawn shop and go, this is a +5 Holy Avenger. And the pawn shop guy goes like, yeah, right.
Michael. Yeah, so, you're talking about Michael.
What mall ninja shop did you shop at?
Right.
No, this is a great and powerful weapon. I'll give you $15. No, hardened steel, enchanted by wizards 1,000 years ago. And the guy's like, $50? And
have anybody else other than I guess Kai and myself read the Dresden Files?
I read all the way up to Skin Game, and at Skin Game, I think I'm going to put it on pause until
Yeah.
the entire series is written. That way, I can just binge read it and not give a shit.
Oh yeah, I'm dumb. Every book he drops, I fucking read it. Every fucking book.
He's got 2 new books out, and I looked at the newer of the first of the 2, and
Peace Talks.
Which one?
Peace Talks.
I thought Peace Talks was already done.
No, Peace Talks. The last 2 books he came out with, and I know this is off topic, but kind of is, because there is loot. It's called Getting Screwed Over at the end, but there is loot. It was called Peace Talks is the first one. It's a 2-part. Well, they're all same parter, but it really is a 2-part book. Peace Talks. Then the next one is Battlegrounds, I think it's called. And yeah, if you ran a campaign that was around that topic, Skink Games being the Ocean 11 meets Magic, that would be fucking fantastic. Your players would have a great time. You're knocking off Hades' treasure room. Who? Hades. You know, the guy that the Greeks were scared about. You have to go back, not to hell, but you have
to go not to hell, but to Hades' realm of Hades.
Right. Yeah.
He liked himself a lot.
Right.
No, I know he didn't, but
right. There is a lot of good little nuggets of useful things in these books that people can throw in their campaigns.
Yes.
And they can put asses and seats. Because if you don't have asses and seats, what's the point of running?
And see, this is the reason why I kind of like endorse the idea that you should have a good amount that you've read, so that way you like. Yeah, I can say Jim Butcher because we've all the Prison Files, but I can also point out like several other authors who are in the genre who are as good but not as popular, and so you can like Simon R. Green. He wrote the Nightside trilogy, which is a really interesting take on London, but bizarre as fuck. Why not go with it and have some more fun? This is all what you can work with, and it gives you ideas on how to make fantasy interesting without having to stay in the old trope. That's all. But I'm going to have to leave because I got work in the morning. So.
Yeah. I actually do. I'm thinking it's about time we start wrapping this up anyway, because I still have to go get some dinner, and we're climbing.
My
on 2
apologies.
Hours. No, that's entirely on me. But yeah, I think we covered this topic pretty well for tonight. You know, we were able to touch on different genres, like how the feel of different genres can differ, different ways to reward the players, different ways to kind of breed that engagement and all that stuff. So I think we touched on this one pretty well, while hopefully leaving enough available so that at some point Crafty can get in on this, because I'm sure he's chomping at the bit, sitting in his office right now listening to us.
Me and Crafty need to get together and have a conversation about what's some certain topics. I see.
Maybe. Maybe. Gotta find some free time.
So yeah, any final thoughts? If you guys have your own channels or anything, feel free to plug them now. Any final thoughts before we head on out of here?
Not right now, but I'm sure they're there.
Like this is supposed to be based on like how do you reward non-fantasy RPGs, and the main thing is that we already stated it. It was in the chat. I think Kai said it. But whenever you've got your campaign in place, you want to give the players new options. You want to give them new contacts. You want to give them a little bit of cred or street reputation. You want to give them the option to take their game in a new direction. They don't have to take it. They can keep doing what they're doing, atypically. And you give them a couple of options for narratives that open up, that blossom like a flower, and let them figure out which petal they want to pick off it, and that's where you go. Now, you don't have to do things like what I suggested there, or like what Kai had stated earlier. But if you want to have a different style of game, play something different than 5e or Paizo's Pathfinder first or second ed, and try a game that actually makes the players think and think outside the box. Don't pass things with just a simple skill roll to where you have, I rolled a 36, knowledge planes tell me everything about this demon. No. Make the players actually have to go and research in the capital city for 7 years and go in and out of libraries and build a relationship with sages. Let the time pass. Let the fighter have his tavern, or let the ship owner finally get that hyperdrive up and going, to where after 7 years you have these narrative options you can explore. You have a new place on your maps you want to go to. You have an idea for a new location for the campaign, or maybe you've got 3 new contacts, one of which will buddy fuck the players every chance he gets and could be your absolute foil. I can't think of the guy's name in Firefly, but he had a very fine hat, and Malcolm Reynolds said that specifically to him. But
That'd be Jane.
Yeah, the guy with the bowler hat.
Yeah.
So you give the players something that's
that
not
wasn't Jane. That was Beaver.
Beaver. That's who it was.
Sorry, when I heard really fine hat, I was thinking that homemade hat his mom sent.
The orange hat. No, not that one.
No, you're talking about Beaver.
Okay.
That was like first episode.
Got it.
So you have these ways that you can give the players new options, but you have to have them thread the needle just right. Yes, railroad them through a situation that might take them 2 months or 2 years. But at the end of it, give them the world. Give them the oyster that they're wanting. That's all I have to say.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that covers it pretty well. I mean, and really, whether it's sci-fi, horror, fantasy, whatever, if you're playing, particularly if you are playing a longer running campaign, or hell, even if it's a short campaign, that's the best reward you can give, is broadening the world and opening up those options, making the players feel like, hey, I have a legitimate choice that I can make here in terms of how I want to, move forward and where we want to go. That's the best way to make the thing memorable. It's like, how long is somebody going to remember getting another +5 Holy Avenger that they're just going to sell to the pawn shop?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think if you're going to give your party loot, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't, I think you should be creative about it. That cigar that I got, that campaign was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, and that's the only thing that's not the only thing I remember out of that campaign, but
the reason, and I know exactly why, the reason you remember that particular item is because it was specifically tailored to you and your character.
Right. And if you get a DM that does that, actually takes time to learn what their characters are about in this campaign or what their players like, then it makes for some interesting loot. Giving a blase plus whatever to whoever, who fucking cares? Because by 3 levels later, they're no longer using it. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. Don't be, Kai said this, read. There is more treasure to give your party in other people's literature than what's, status quo. Status quo is boring.
Yep. And to touch on one last thing before we go, in terms of rewards, sometimes rewards can come from very interesting places, like a game that my buddy here in the chat, Kui, and I played some years ago, where our mutual friend Moose had a paladin who shattered his Holy Avenger and took that as a sign that he'd have been abandoned by his god, so he'd started worshiping Asmodeus. And then later on, got a unholy Avenger and shattered that too in front of us. And it was one of the funniest fucking things we've ever seen.
Oh, and Crafty, you are so right there. Giving your players a chance to build their own mega weapon is so much better than just handing it to them, because then they value it so much more.
Right.
Best weapon, most memorable weapon I ever had was a great scimitar from an old barbarian that I played, who he took that scimitar from an Ifrit that he had hunted down and killed and made it stronger by imbuing it with, wrapping the handle in leather from a dragon that he spent his entire life hunting. Like, from the time he was a kid until he was damn near an old man. He spent his life hunting this dragon and, only had a few years left. still decided I'm going to make this thing even better. This is my fucking trophy. These are the two greatest enemies I ever fought. And like that campaign was probably like 15 years ago. I still remember that super fucking clearly.
Yeah, I don't blame you on that one.
Mhm.
And for my last parting thoughts, I really don't have a whole lot because we've hit everything. So yeah, and
All right.
just enjoy what you're doing. If your
Yep.
players are happy, you're doing a good job.
I think I've said my last thoughts for this. Thank you for letting me come and talk on your podcasts, and hope to see you all soon.
Yep,
This
I
is
appreciate
always
you all for joining us. By the way, everyone, if you are not subscribed to the other Gatekeepers, I have links to all of their channels in the description down below. Tonight we were joined by Connell, Kai, Bruce Lombardo, and the OGGM. You can find Bruce's and OG's channels linked again in the description down below, as well as the channels to every other Gatekeeper who is part of this group. So please, if you haven't already, open that description and follow all of them. They all make fantastic content. It is worth your time. And I guess with that all said and done, friends and gamers of all stripes, I bid you a wonderful night. And as I always like to say, in the world of tabletop games, remember that you don't want to just sit back and watch. Get in there in game. Have a good one.
Good night.
We're still live. I don't know if you meant to do that.
Yeah, I think he left the studio instead of ending the session. You want
We run things down.